All right. Welcome everybody. It's good to see you. I'm glad to be back. I know it's been about a month or so since the last time I was painting here live on YouTube, and so yep, I kind of took a little bit of that time off because I painted quite a bit leading up into kind of the Christmas season. So I'm back. I'm going to be doing some live streams over the next couple of months, and so as I'm making things here, I'll just turn on the camera and you can hang out and ask any questions you have because I will be around. So thanks for coming on today. So I was yesterday. I did this uh, portrait demo for a painting society here in Wichita, Kansas. Had about an hour and was really trying to kind of do some of the things that I've done in some of my previous streams and in some of the previous videos that I've posted on the channel here. And you can kind of see and learn as much about those as you want. They're all there, and didn't quite get to the place where I wanted to give it the refinement and the finish that it needed. This is definitely in the sketch phase, kind of and really not even quite that all that finished. The paint should still be a little wet from yesterday, so that'll be nice because I can work right back into it. Some of it may have dried, we'll see. But I should be able to work right into it, and we'll kind of take these, what I call these kind of two easy steps to just refining your portrait. And I'll just give them to you now, and then you can you can turn off the video if you want, or you can watch it kind of slowly, be unveiled as it goes. Uh, Kind of the first step that I do is really assess the piece, and from kind of the sketch mode, I'm looking back and forth onto what I've been working on and where we're working from, whether it's a live model or picture or what have you. And then from there, I will I'll just say, what are the greatest needs, and I'll begin there. So for me, right away, just kind of this is step one, just assessing it. I'd say, all right, some of the biggest needs are just covering um, the canvas. Because some areas where there's underpainting still, or not underpainting, but a ground layer kind of still showing through. I mean, those are kind of okay to leave out in certain areas where they work with the skin tone already. But in some areas, like this dark edge, it starts to kind of steal some of the space you might have in your work. And so we're going to begin addressing the kind of most important parts to kind of bring it up to speed. That's step one. And then step two will be kind of the constant refinement. And I realize that's kind of vague, but that's sort of the process of it, is just a slow kind of working back and forth, finding the problems and then solving them. So there'll be things that come up as I go, and I'm like, it's just something is not quite right there. Something needs a little bit of work, and that's where I'll begin until I kind of solve all those problems. And a lot of times that's through three things. I'll first of all check my drawing, so I'll really look really close to my source material and to my painting and see if there's a part that's bugging me. That's drawing is probably the first thing I need to check out. That's kind of the foundation of your painting. Next is going to be value. So I'm going to say, okay, if the drawing looks okay, really what's happening here with value, because value is going to be probably the next culprit. And really between those two, the problem should almost be solved. Occasionally, you're going to have to think color as well. But most times when you get your drawing and you get your value right, everything else comes about okay too. That said, we're gonna do all those three and kind of those two steps I was talking about, and yeah, we'll just kind of go back and forth, and maybe at some point I'll finally get to step two, but we're gonna be in step one while I kind of fill in the rest, and we'll see how far we get today. I'll probably stay on for about 2 hours or so. So make sure if you have a question to drop it off, and I'll just answer as I go. I'm just happy to help you in your art making and whatever you have regarding your thoughts. Man, you can even critique what I'm doing. That always helps too. So feel free to let me know how it's going, and would love to hear from you. So I'm going to start off. I still have just the same brushes I was using yesterday, and I'm going to work back in. I'm going to try this setup here. You can kind of see I mixed up a few skin tones. You can see those in other videos. I've got that sort of stuff all over my channel, and so there'll be some specifics that you can find elsewhere. But where we're going to dive in right here, and just thanks for joining. And if you're watching this later on, leave a comment or a question there, and I'd be happy to get to it. All right, so that of those two easy steps, step one, I've got to get coverage everywhere that needs coverage, because there's a few spots like here and here and some areas around the eye that really needs to be resolved in order to start making that kind of second step, that really informed decision of how what needs to be altered so that the piece is successful. So we're going to start right there. I'm going to do exactly those 2 points that I talked about. I'm going to address those first. So I'm going to look in here really close and just kind of come back in and find some of these areas that just weren't quite covered yet. And it's amazing too. It just doesn't take very much, but once you do a few of those spots, you'll be amazed at just how quickly those unfinished edges, those things are just kind of sticking out there, hanging out there. Immediately when you address them, it's like, oh wow, this is this is working, and there's something here that I hadn't really seen yet, because like this little dot here, we're just gonna cover it up. We're gonna make sure that we get some paint on it, and immediately that just changes the way the face goes back into the shadow there. And we're gonna build up some of the darks too, because I think I kind of got dry. Yeah, it's a little wet, but not but still kind of workable. Yeah, do a little bit more here. So like this edge of the eye, this is dark back here, and that lighter value is gonna cause a problem. So that's just a little bit of covering right there. Big deal. Big changes. Very helpful. Again, so all I am kind of hunting and pecking around here, finding the spots that I didn't quite get covered before. And yeah, so there we are. That's a good start. If you're here, now's a great time to consider how your own practice is going, your own painting practice, and you may not have all your materials right in front of you, but you can begin imagining, okay, when I get back to my studio, or when I get into where I get to create, what are some of the takeaways I'm gonna immediately apply to my work from what I've seen today. Those are always valuable thoughts. If you can kind of immediately begin planning, then it goes a long way right when you get back into the studio. Yeah, it was a lot of fun yesterday shooting. Well, I tried to record the video for and then share it, but you know what? I was foiled by one small thing. I misplaced one cable. I thought I had packed it and did not, and it literally I was still able to do my demo. I was still able to video it and put it up on the big screen at the art center that I was doing it at, but I wasn't able to record it, which made me very sad, because I wanted to share that and share just some of my thoughts about the early stages of working on this painting. Okay, slowly working in some of these areas that Didn't quite get coverage. I think this mouth goes a little farther. That's one of those few of those things that you decisions, continued drawing decisions that you make. Just because you're working on the painting doesn't mean you're constantly correcting some of the things that you saw that were a problem earlier from like, oh, or you create new problems. I mean, that always happens too. You're working on your painting and I'll set down a little bit of color and that like clearly just one of those things of like, whoop, that that really didn't work there. And you kind of discover those moments and then it's like, oh, I've got to go back and reassess. Maybe shift that line over a little bit or shift the edge of this or that, so that it's working. All right, I'm still looking around. This is still that kind of step one, and mixing up a little bit to work into here. When I get a little bit more warmth underneath this the ridge of this brow, and just find some of those spaces for it. I'm kind of, whether I realize it or not, in the painting sketch, you don't have anything that's like as dark yet that you really need to put in. It's still still a little thin in some areas before I can really like lay on a little bit more paint, and that's kind of nice because it allows me to do, as they say, kind of work from the middle. Worked from the middle out, so I can build up my darker values, and then I can also build up my lighter values from kind of an overall mid-range. And yeah, you'll find the more you work from the live model, and the more you just paint, period, that it you get just better at rather than kind of making those big generalizations, you kind of you see painting, you see some of those key spots earlier and quicker, and you can touch those up and hit those kind of before they become problems later. So if you just hopped on, this is a bit of a portrait sketch that I had completed yesterday at like a demo. I was judge for a local painting society, and they also let me give a little bit of a demo, and it was really good. Got to critique and work with a bunch of folks on their paintings. That was really fun too. Always glad to just have that be that extra eye. I know that extra eye is really valuable for me. Before I finish, each piece, I generally go get my studio mate, or I'll grab my wife. I'll just get someone else and say, hey, give me an extra set of peepers on this one, because I just can't see it anymore. And that was really fun. And so this was about an hour-long portrait sketch in which I was just sharing a little bit of my process with everyone who was there, and happy to do the same with you today, as I kind of take what I call the next 2 steps after you've done your initial portrait sketch. You know, kind of what comes next, and that's what we're working on today. So the first step I like to do is just fill in all the areas that haven't quite, you know, maybe some of my drawing is still showing through in a few spots, you know, or maybe some of the ground layer is still sneaking through. And those are the things that I'm searching for and trying to solve. Create a little more light. I was right at the end there. I was showing everybody how, and I kind of scraped it off, how you could use a little bit more paint body to, you know, catch some highlights, and that was fun. You know, that's always fun. It's like the icing on the cake, you know, when you're doing these sorts of things. So I've got a little bit of I think paint left over there. Yeah, if you're here for the first time, welcome, and 2, feel free to let me know what you'd like to, you know, hear about, learn about, or, you know, what are you working on? What's causing you grief presently in your practice? Would love to hear, and man, I'll just be a listener. That's all you want me to be. Or if you want a few ideas or some ways forward, happy to share those too. So I got a little, it's kind of looking back here while I'm working. Some of the parts of the piece, I lost a little bit of chroma in creating some light areas during the demo. And so, you know, I'm just going to begin kind of working on and refining that. All right, but I gotta stay on task too. That's the hardest thing about just kind of working in this space is, you know, I'll want to, oh, I want to touch on that, or I'd like to just there or there. Happens. Spot here. And we'll see how we end up here. I'll be able to, because like I said, I think some of this is a little like dry in this area, so I'm gonna really be able to kind of lay in some nice rich darks here to kind of set this back here, and that'll show some of this lighter shadow on her skin before we get in kind of those deep darks. But until then, we're gonna slowly work toward getting coverage on everything. It's hard to assess, and that's one of the things that gets really tough about kind of this space. It's really hard to assess what needs done when there's a few areas undone. So even like this, it's like, you know, it's like I know that I really need a little bit more of a dark here just to kind of tell me how, you know, how light my shadow is on this side of her face. See, it just made that a little richer, and that's what it's probably going to ultimately look out. I might even abandon my chromatic mixed black and jump into an ivory black or something like that to get something really nice and deep and dark there. Also, too, if you just want to listen to my voice and take a nap in the middle of the day, that's fine too. I think I'm getting a knock at the door, studio door. It's my daughter saying, "Hey, I'm back from school." some of these areas around the eyes I really do need to refine a little bit, but I really want to keep them loose. There's always value in um, especially keeping eyes especially soft, and not getting too much detail, um, because it's a space thing. If we keep things a little more chiseled in the nose and the brow and the eyes a little softer, we can really create, even though we're looking directly on to the face of the model. You can begin seeing, um, that, hey, uh, there are some areas that really feel like they're farther back, even though, and these are subtle things. I'm not talking about like a depth of field effect on a camera or something like that, but just creating those harder edges come forward, the softer edges go back. You can always use that to your advantage in your painting. Patrick, hi, how you doing? The edge on her right eye, my left, as it moves into the shadow. Thanks. Yeah, it is really tough. Some of those spots where, uh, thanks for the comment too. So some of those spots where, like, you just lose edges and you have no idea what's happening. And the kind of light and shadow spots. Like those are really great to let happen. And sometimes there can be a really long uncomfortable phase where you're not really addressing it, and we'll kind of do that in that area where it just won't be addressed for a while. I'm slowly trying to build up some of the color and cover up all my ground layer. You can see this is the ground layer color here, 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 here. I'm just trying to remove most of that in the face. And then, my goal today is to really kind of get this to an area of finish that I'm satisfied with. I'll probably stay on here till about 3 o'clock. We'll see how far we get online. But then I'll probably take the rest of it. Well, take a break for one thing, and then spend the rest of my day kind of sorting it out. And but yeah, thanks for that comment. That's a really good point. It's just one of those things you just kind of let happen, and try not to get too. It's hard because you really want to. I mean, I know I do. You really want to say, oh well, what's happening there is this, because I know the anatomy of the eye, and sometimes you just can't see it, and that's okay. But it can be scary for a while, and it can look strange for a while. So you have to find those weird balances of like, hey, I'm okay with this being a little uncomfortable, maybe for a bit. I am a little uncomfortable about it, but I'm going to kind of keep moving forward. I want to find some of these areas that I really haven't described yet, um, in, in the depth here, the eye, kind of the same side here. And all these changes, it's funny, you're constantly making decisions, and uh, if all your information's not in there, because that's kind of what I'm going for right now, is make sure I get all my information in there. If it's not in there, I'm gonna have a lot of trouble, um, because I'm gonna start making drawing decisions like, oh well, here's where the eye ends and begins, and if I haven't established some of those little bits, then I'm gonna be really confused, and I'm gonna start saying, oh well, the pupil's here in comparison to this edge of the eye, and then it can go south. um, good to hear from you, Patrick. Appreciate the comment. It gets me to talk about some things that everyone else would like to hear about, I'm sure. And I'm only one guy with only one train of thought. So appreciate that. Mixing up a little bit of more of an intense highlight here. So I'm using lead white, cad yellow, and cad red, mixing up a little bit of more of an intense color here. I don't use a lot of thinner. I kind of just like the paint. I like just some of the brush stuff that gets to happen when you do that. Um, and so I'm just letting you know that most, well, I was gonna say most other artists, but I really don't know. Many of them probably spend a little more time, using medium, and I just don't use a whole lot of it. That doesn't mean anything, by the way. Your practice is your practice, and what you're comfortable with and what you know is good too. All right, getting in a few more of those details. Eyelid looks like it goes a little higher here, but you're always, those are always those things that's like, oh, maybe it does, and maybe I misdrew or mispainted another area, and I'll have to kind of circle back around and fix it. We'll find out. Try to share this painting later, where place where you guys can see it all finished. My Instagram, it's usually where I end up. I guess as a visual artist, that's the platform I feel kind of the most seen on, I guess. I know it sounds a little strange, I suppose, to say, but I feel like it's a great spot for visual 2D artists like myself. Wanting to just pump up a little more chroma here. I've got it color fairly dead, and there's a lot more color there than I have in there. And this beautiful spot right here, where we get a little more of just kind of a cad red and white. Down here, the bottom blush of the cheek. Here's my problem. Remember that thing I was supposed to be doing? I was like, I lose track. I find these spots where I'm like, ooh, I want to get in there and add that, and then I'm like, oh yeah, these were the two easy steps of refining your portrait. No, not just what I want to do. Okay, there's this nice little highlight here, kind of underneath on the underneath the lip, or kind of on top of the lip. It's one of those nice spots that can often be forgotten in a portrait, because there's just always so many things going on when you're looking at somebody's face. Yeah, West Coast schools live and die on edges. I agree, and I feel like sometimes the the whole edge thing is maybe a little overkill. How serious some people get about it. Because I mean, me personally, I'm just a little more of a softer edge person, just by what I like. And so, if I intentionally leave a really hard edge in, man, it was intentional. um, but yeah, it's funny. I think it's amusing to me what becomes really important, for just for certain people. I laugh about it with myself. Like there's certain parts of a painting that I feel like are really important, and to others it's like, well, it's not really that big of a deal. Um, it's funny to find those almost tribes. He's like, I'm in the edges tribe, and it's all about that. Um, so I think it's good to kind of listen to some of those. Like, so for instance, here's an edge move. I was kind of looking at the transition between kind of this shape and color to this dark, And right at that spot, I was just kind of seeing this warmth, and I was like, I'm going to drop that warmth in. That certainly softens this transition, but it's kind of nice because there's a warm kind of edge here, but then a little farther down on the face, you can see that there's like kind of this cool, and those are those really they're fun spaces because you can pump a lot of color into skin tones kind of in these edges that the eye will sort of pick up on, but I've been known to like dip directly into Viridian or burnt sienna or sometimes even cad red and just drop a little line in there just because it's sort of invisible between the dark and the light, but it kind of creates this little pop of color that is seen when you get in a little closer. Yeah, straight from tube. All right. Well, how's your learning going, and what have you kind of picked up doing YouTube? And are you on the West Coast? I don't know. I mean, you don't have to tell me specifically. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm gonna get this shadow a little darker in here. I wanna see kind of how the rest of my values are, and sometimes it's hard for me to tell where I am value wise um, until I've got really some of those deep darks in. I think we're getting close to, the one of the reasons for making the video is just refining your portrait um, from the sketch. I think I'm getting really close to kind of thinking more along step two rather than just, you know, filling in and finding all the spots that needed attention. So I think I'm getting close to that. The hardest thing about doing things on live stream is um, I generally the way I set it up here is I can't like I have to lean back to see it, and, rather than being able to kind of step back and just take a quick look and assess. Um, it's really kind of orangey. That it's not too dark here. I'm probably going a little too dark than it needs to go, but this edge of the eye here is a little darker. Not necessarily makeup. I'm not really going for that. Um, but I'm just finding a little bit of a cooler. So, I had this kind of warmer skin tone here. I can dip into my cooler yellow, yellow ochre, and make a skin tone that's just a little greener than was here, to kind of put in this space, work back into that because I was like, it just feels a little darker than I intended there. Because like this section here is a little cooler, it's a little warmer across here, warmer across the bridge of the nose and the cheekbones. So it's just fun to continue to play around and find those spaces. So some of this mix here is kind of fun. It's just the mix of like my paint and the graphite from the sketch I put down. Michigan. All right. Awesome, Patrick. All right. Yeah, the palette, and here it is in action, with a whole different orientation. Yeah, I do really enjoy it, and I use it every day, even if I'm working on a bigger work that doesn't really fit here. I uh, I mean, I still use the palette, and I just kind of set it up however I want so that it's easier to work into like a bigger piece. And so, and no, I don't work for Edge Pro, and no, they give me no kickback or anything. It's just been, it's been a big game changer. I was having a lot of, just, funny enough, just mixing at more of an angle like this or a 45 degree made a big difference. Whereas before I was just kind of, using these flat surfaces. I've never quite been one to hold a palette and do the kind of handheld thing. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's not been one of the big things that is in my learning, and so like I've had a lot of less hand pain and wrist pain from kind of using it at an angle. So still one of the best purchases I've made. Yeah, Patrick, it's really cool. I was thinking about when I first started painting, was 1998, and I I just I just went to the local college. Like, I mean, that's all I knew to do. Of course, there wasn't a YouTube. There wasn't a place where I could learn from anyone else, or learn any techniques or do anything. And so sometimes when I kind of look back and consider that, I'm like, man, um, what a this like that silly saying, what a time to be alive. Really, to have so much access um, to great painters, who I mean who just have tons of videos here and there, and wow, I don't know. Sometimes I'm just shocked. I'm like, what would have happened, had I had access to that? Would I have gone the university route? I don't know that I would have. And so, but time happened how it happened, and here we are. But it's very cool. Like I love that accessibility, which was, I had nothing like that. Um, there, that was my old man speech, like back in my day speech. And here's a little drawing part that, like I said, I'm making little decisions as I refine all the areas that didn't quite get finished in the 1 hour quick block in. Try to give um, the attenders of the demo something to take home, and to give them enough of a picture of the process to really uh, uh, I don't know, feel like that, they got their time's worth. Is like this little area here. We've got a little bit more of the jaw here, and the neck doesn't quite move into the jaw, but just slightly we get a little bit more. And and those are little small decisions that, yeah, they they help. Even if they seem at the time a little, it's like, oh, what does that millimeter do? You know, it does. It just creates a little bit of a break here, and I am going to soften that edge because I really want this side of the neck to move back around, and so I will soften that. Just trying to get my kind of cooler, keeping the neck a little cooler on the whole, because I'll make it a purposeful decision to make the skin tones a little cooler in the neck, warmer in the face. Our warmer colors come forward, cooler colors recede. And so, I definitely want it to feel, by the time I get completely finished, that this, portrait is, the face is sitting on top of a neck, and that neck is back in space a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you like the palette. It's awesome. Yeah, no, man, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're asking questions. Really, that's what that's what it's here for. It's kind of those things where I'm like, I was gonna do this anyway today, so you know, kind of opening it up um, and just making it available as as part of the process. Need to do it more often. Okay, I kind of like that. Some things I wanted to clean up that just a little bit. So, so you might have noticed I'm kind of operating with three brushes right now. They're Utrecht brand. They're a mixed synthetic. Everyone has their opinions about brushes. Basically, use the one you like. Use the one that feels good. And I like these quite a bit. Um, I like they seem they retain their shape pretty well, and I use a very this is a very fine weaved linen, and so that really there's not a lot of texture to really rough them up, and I think they would lose shape if it was a really stiff cotton canvas. And they do. On some of those things I've had to work on this little rougher. I can shred them. But but I do like these kind of for that, and I like to use the three brushes. I'll just kind of keep a light value, a middle value, and a dark value, and I'll just work them back and forth. So as I need a little bit of light value, I pick that one up. As I need a little bit of a mid range, if I want some mid tones, so as I kind of fill that in there and make it warm, then I'll just pick up this brush and just try to kind of get this, just soften it. These are just little tiny little marks I'm making, and if I kind of bump into an area and think, oh well, I wanted to bring that back, and then working back into that spot a little bit. This is probably getting a little too refined right now for what's happening in the rest of it. There's a lot of rough areas, but it's that kind of working in, working back, working in until it's like, okay, yep, that feels like it's sitting where I'd like. All right. Gonna make a few. I think I want to make this decision. A little drawing correction around the brow. I'm going to make it a little cooler. That's what I see kind of in this space here. The terminus between the light and the terminus of the light where the shadow begins. It just looks a little cool right here. And it looks warmer right across the bridge. And those are little things that I'm going to kind of cue into. I think this just comes a little bit farther in here than I have it. Um, and that really it's those little things that can like wreck things sometimes, especially around the eyes, and then the eyes can look farther apart, or they can those are the little decisions that are like whoops. Um, here. Right. Sometimes there's a little bit of an exaggeration. I'll exaggerate some of the warmth over this range, some of the cool, because there's a lot of coolness around the eyes, a lot of kind of cooler and greener areas in and around the mouth. And so really, we'll almost exaggerate those or play those up a little bit with what I'm working on. Right now, I need to get this cleaned up on this side, up over here, so that all those little bits of ground layer sticking through aren't messing with me as I try to move forward. The eyebrow here. It's just funny how those little spots really do mess with things, and always I'm just amazed. It's one of those things where I think, I don't know how on earth. Sometimes I am surprised myself that a portrait ever gets accomplished with all of the things that can go wrong. Yes. Whoopsies is a technical term. Lots of those. A little darker here and bluer, you know. This blue fabric is kind of creating some reflected light, and you know, I don't want to overdo it. It's easy to overdo it, always easy to overdo it. But you know, just to make it a little cooler, a little bluer. I'll take a little cerulean here. And just kind of work my way into that area underneath the brow. Now, immediately, you know, I'm like, oh, I don't like exactly how that happened. Partially because what I lost was a really important part to describe on any eye, and it's this area here that is, you know, your frontal bone here, you know, kind of extends down this way. Well, generally our eyebrows kind of curve up and over the frontal bone, and this little part here, catching light, really often overlooked. But you know, when you have that in place, you you know, it's funny how immediately there is it's you know, it's like, oh yeah, of course, that's how the structure works. So I just need to put that back in. I got painted over some in my work in that area. Okay. And then there's even some kind of some darker parts there that got lost. You know, I'm still using a pretty, you know, a bigger brush, and I just want to kind of keep coming back to that as I go. Not trying to get too tight just yet. There'll be time for that, and I always say those are where the time where it just gets really long. I don't want to make anyone sit through my long battles of kind of continuing to figure it out, figure it out, figure it out. Like in some of this passages in here, just a few marks, but it's working. Those are those like really not intended, but hey, that's working. Just leave that. Um, very painterly, just a few strokes, but does the trick. You know, of course, John Singer Sargent was like the master at that, and just seems like a few strokes could do so much. I want to cool off this edge a little more, but I still want to define it. Really soften that, keep that that edge intact. I'm gonna create a little bit of a green here using cerulean and yellow ochre, as well as some white, and just along this edge. We'll see if we got it dark enough. Yeah, I don't know. Also, don't want to make her look like she has a 5 o'clock shadow either. So, yeah, there's it's always a balance. Looking at the shadow cast by her nose, I'd like to really, again, this is me just constantly jumping around, and I'm gonna give myself a quick mirror critique. Always great to have a mirror if you don't have one in the studio. Okay. Allows me to see that I want to soften a few edges, move some shadow lines for drawing purposes. Tucking those away. All right. Gonna make a nice warm shadow for underneath the nose. So I'm kind of taking some of my mixed black, which is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, adding a little bit of alizarin crimson into it, and just kind of a little darker bit there. Just because that shadow is pretty deep. Wraps around. The nose gets a little lighter and a little cooler as it goes up, so it's nice. Sometimes it's nice because those things are like already happening, and you're like, all right, cool. I don't have to quite do that. And then making a few decisions to warm up the shadow on this side. I just kind of glancing in there. I was like, man, that looks a lot warmer than I have it, and slightly darker. So I just needed a little bit more. Right. So oftentimes, kind of in these moments, you know, I'm just moving back and forth. So I'm going to carry the shadow a little farther. It was bugging me. But you know, I'm kind of looking in this area, and it feels like it is. Well, you know, I still have some areas I haven't covered, so I take that back. But I was thinking probably after this, I'm going to jump into the forehead to just establish that a little stronger because I feel like this is starting to solidify in ways that it's not up here. And I just don't want to get away from myself before I've you know, solved some of these. I don't want to like really get the eyes done and then not have the rest kind of work along the same pace. Generally a good practice. You know, some people do things piecemeal and they'll, you know, work here and then kind of work, you know, and I've done that method too, but I think it's better to kind of let that painting energy as you're moving across the canvas kind of let yourself assess almost constantly, you know, what needs my attention now, you know, yeah, I've handled that. I've done this part. Well, you know, what's next? Probably won't make that as severe as in severely dark, but I want to include some, you know, want it to be a little moody maybe. It's like it gets a lot warmer kind of here. We're gonna have a nice highlight there. If only I knew my eye anatomy better and I could tell you what each part was. I think I learned it at one point for my eye tutorial. But then again, it's been a while. A little lighter here, then got it. That light almost comes right up to the eye. Let's build that up just a tad. Already liking that section a lot better. Knew it needed a little bit. And then here's the kind of marks that I always a little intimidated to do. I know they need it, but I purposefully or with a lot of fear and cowardice been kind of waiting to move into a certain area. Yeah, hey Patrick, thanks. It was great chatting. Yeah, best man. I'll be around, so thanks. Uh, so it's kind of thinking in this area. Um, right here, it's darker until it begins to kind of come out and catch a little bit of light, and we'll play that up. You know, those are some warm kind of eyeliner there, and also that's a little bit of an eyelid that you know you can take the time, always worth to really kind of describe some of the anatomy. So that's a lot better clarity on that eye. It definitely needed it, and I was definitely avoiding it. Are there areas in your painting where you're just like, I know I need to get to that, but I'm not quite sure that I feel courageous enough to do it. It's me. Happens all the time. So right now I'm just trying to cover. There's a lot of areas that I've not dealt with, and I want to get coverage before I move on to, you know, there's some stuff working in this area that I need to kind of bring the forehead back to that too. So that is where I'm headed next. So stick around for some forehead painting. Do you ever think you'd hear that in a video? Yep. Liking how it's going so far. Definitely spent some time. Um, you know, there's all the kind of pre-work on the front of this. So, you know, I had time with my model and, um, you know, that I was certain, you know, my setup was going to make a good painting. You know, that was kind of front of it. And then the drawing, you know, carefully making sure that I get the features in such a way that, you know, I'm going to be satisfied when I get to it. Last thing I want to do, I haven't really done yet, is kind of warm up some of the edges of these lips. I got this a little lighter too. I should probably get out my lighter brush. Look CAD rad here. Just soften this and lighten it. It was not light enough. In fact, it was still kind of a pencil, and I'm painting into the pencil right now, so it's responding accordingly. I'm just mixing it in with the paint. But yeah, that was another edge that was like, yeah, that needs to be addressed. Part of my title of the video, you know, step one, really making sure that I'm getting adequate coverage everywhere. Unfinished areas come back and bite you. And so at least getting everything to the same speed um, is a priority. A little too red there. That's all right. We'll work with that. Trying to work back into that really dark line because there's not really a line there. That's just because I was working up to the edge of my drawing when I was painting. So I'm just going to kind of work back and forth, work into that line, come back on the other side. Put my finger accidentally into lead white. Hazard. Making a choice. There's there's something. Sometimes you just need to sit and look. And for me, sometimes I just need to take a look and say, okay, where do I need to go next? What really needs attention? I was thinking, you know what, the nose really needs some attention. Just a little bit. Kind of a point that's a little more yellow right at the tip. There's before it gets a little cooler as it tips back around and goes into the shadow. So, you know, I mixed up that skin tone here, but then I can come in, grab a little bit kind of a green. I can even, I know you can't see it, but I got all these kind of purpley colors here that I can come in. Okay. I think I want to do a few things. I think this is a little low. Nostrils a little low on this side. Excuse me. Right. Yeah, if you want to see some bigger sections of a painting very similar to this, I did quite a few videos of my work on the 5 Joyful Mysteries. Those are peppered all the way through the channel, and you know those are available to check out. And put on, help you go to sleep at night when You just can't turn off your brain. Okay, so this, I had kind of a line here that was dark, and that was all that was the pencil. I want to lighten that up and warm it up because there's, we know this, as the nose goes back and kind of hits this little point where it's touching the front of the face. That's just going to be a really warm, and not even necessarily a line, although I am going to try to cover it up with some lighter, warmer colors because this is it's just all warm. And that immediately does something. We didn't have to do much, and already it's starting to feel more like, oh yeah, we're painting a portrait here. All right, I put it off far too long, so let's kind of move into the forehead, so that everything is getting worked at about the same speed. So kind of planning. There's moments too where I like to use a little bit bigger of a brush. We're going to be using some kind of crossing big areas. So I've got a big number 12 here. And so when I mix, I'll just be like laying down some bigger strokes. As we begin to describe the planes of the forehead. And as always, questions, anything. If you're watching this in the year 2025, lay a comment, ask me a question. If I'm still alive, I'll answer it. If there's still an internet, I'll answer it. Yeah, and you can see, those are just a few strokes, but already kind of improving. And also, these areas fairly warm, but quickly, as we get to the edge of the shadow here, cools off and starts to, fade off to that side. So that will be the next move after I feel like I've established, these areas well enough. Paint into some of my highlight just a little bit. Yeah, coming a long way. Take your video slider all the way back to the beginning, and just kind of see, there was an hour of blocking all of that in, now we've achieved about another hour of kind of refining uh, some of those spaces that were, weren't as strong, needed attention, and they're getting there. It's always exciting. Kind of light this up a little bit underneath here. I think I just got pushed down. I don't want to make her seem angry. Soften the features just a little bit. It's nice too, a lot of times in kind of a darker haired person, um, you find a lot of greens, and so I kind of mixed up a little bit of viridian, a little yellow ochre here, just to kind of carry the edge of the eyebrow, send that up just a little bit. Same for this side over here. The longer that I look at it, the more, yeah, there's kind of a dark spot in here, which I'm gonna come back and correct. But it's lighter, it's greener, it's soft. It's very very soft, and some of the skin tones even are kind of peeking through here and there. Just the softer the better. Come in here with that richer, dark. But if it's kind of a drawing decision at this point, that is mostly about right here-ish. And so we'll see if it ends up working or not. Oh, I think so. Okay. Kind of come to another point of decision. And I what I wanted to do, which was begin cooling this off a little bit. As it goes back around to the shadow. So adding some, a little bit of green, and again I say green, but these are subtle purples and subtle greens. There's still some warmth, I don't want to completely lose my pink, but really trying to really send that around. Remember, we're this kind of grouping of spheres or volumes. So really want to kind of think about this whole volume of the forehead, whole volume of each eye, volume of the nose, the lips, cheeks, and chin. All of those as you're working, building those. Okay, like that. I think I want to get it a little more darker, like on the very edge, as though it's traveling around. fun on the edge of the shadow, an orangey decay. Gonna get that. Putting my finger in more paint. It's not right. So you do that at least 50 more times. I think I need to just lighten up section a little bit here, as it, it is still fairly dark around this line on the nose, but then I'm going to bring up the light a little bit. And this is, I think now, everything now is really covered. Yeah, I haven't worked on these areas out here. Yeah, we'll get to those. But I really want to establish the face today as far as my goal. So yeah, so I'm kind of taking a look, saying I'm gonna get a nice, it looks warm, maybe a little in between. I just want to kind of come up here a little more, get some alizarin crimson, so it's a cooler red, but it still needs to be a little bit lighter than what I just made it there. I'll mix up yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, so I can still get a nice skin tone, put more white in it. But it's a little bit of a cooler skin tone rather than some of the more intense cad red, cad yellow areas over here. And at the same time, I still see these passages that almost seem a little orange. Yeah, that was helpful. And two, because I'm kind of as I continue to work this way. Nader, you're awesome. Yes, you can. I don't know if it. I don't know if it works that way, but I'll take all the ones you can give. Thanks, Nader. Appreciate that. Very sweet. All right, so I'd like to make there's a lot warmer here than I have it. So I'm gonna come into I'm gonna think a little bit about this like warmer side and what's gonna be the kind of cooler side. I really want this one to feel warmer, and I want there to be a slight movement of coolness as it goes in and around this side. So my warm red, which is cad red, very warm. My cool red, it's the alizarin crimson. So I'm going to use a little more of it, and trying to make some of these make this a little redder, more ruddier. Just think a little more accurate to what her face, the coloring of her skin tones throughout this passage. And so I was able to warm that up, redden it, but still able to keep it cool and move it, make this still feel like it's farther away than this. And those are those little, I don't know, they amount to like a parlor trick more than anything. Just using color temperature to tell the viewer what's nearer to them and what's farther away from them. And for the longest time, I would mostly just say, oh, well, I'm just trying to paint what I see. And yeah, to a degree, you don't want to get too far away from that because, things can go south pretty quick. when we just start making things up. But you can, there's a little bit of fudging you can do with temperature and a few other things that can make for some very, very beautiful passages and create space in ways that are a little harder to do. All right. Adding some more of that kind of red and up against that shadow. Kind of looking elsewhere where I see a nice warm shadow. So I feel like there's a little bit here that I haven't addressed very much. Okay. That's pretty fairly red right in here too. Um, you know, as I continue in this, so in this space, you know, I could kind of say uh, everything in the face is now worked to the same level. So kind of our first step, you know, title of the video is 2 steps. First step was just making sure we got everything covered. We did that. Second step was beginning to make those refinements here and there. And now this is to, you know, kind of that, all right, hey, we have refined the portrait sketch we had. And from here, it goes into a greater and greater just detail. And because I don't want to get too far away from every other part, but I will probably you know, spend another 30 minutes or so here on the live stream, and then at some point when I think, oh, that's probably about all I can do, because the further refinements just get really hard to make out in you know, in a 1080p video. It's one of those things that you really have to see in person to begin to appreciate. But you know, if you were to take a look at the video at the beginning, kind of to where we are now, and you can kind of see, you know, just how far things have come, you know, in an hour and a half. And it doesn't always take too long. Kind of stay focused. Okay. I think what I want to do next is there's a little bit of light falling on this cheekbone over here, and I want to get it right because it looks so nice over there. And really, that's what I end up doing by the end. I say I'm kind of like, okay, what are the parts that I feel like I need that have, you know, they just got lost. You know, I was working my way up to them, and you know, for whatever reason, they're just not there. So wanting to tell a little bit about that cheekbone, just got lost in the working my way to a greater and greater finish. And then I was gonna say, okay, well, what comes next? And at this point, I'm pretty much in a spot where I'd say I want to clean up a few edges here and there. I want to see if there's not a few strokes that I can make to really create some deeper darks, like in here. Um, the hair is one of those fun things in paint. You don't have to do much, and it's really easy to. Well, it feels like, oh wait, I should get out my little liner brush and paint a few flyaways and just let color do it. Put a few strokes of color in the right spots and just let the rest happen. You know, just kind of do that there. And now it really does feel like we have this little bit of hair kind of coming down through here. And if I do want to just do a little more refinement, I can come back in here, take a little bit of my yellow ochre and white, and maybe I can put a little swoop there. See, but then I feel like, yeah, maybe kind of overdid it there. Maybe not. Maybe another one right there. And then really that side stays pretty dark. Okay. All right, I think now the mouth still needs just a little bit because my drawing, I'll tell you what, getting out the mirror, that's always the trick, is getting out your hand mirror. If you don't have one in the studio, get one today. Because the hand mirror is really nice. It lets you just suddenly see what needs work. What haven't I spent enough time on? Been looking at it for a long time. What does it need now? And so I can say, okay, I can see a few areas that I can do a little bit more work on. The chin, the shadows in and around the chin haven't really been dealt with, so I can do a little bit better there, get some of that reflected light in, and work around the lips and the mouth. I think that's really the last space that hasn't been addressed. Thanks, Anna. I appreciate that. I appreciate your kind words. Maybe someday, uh, spread the word if anyone will listen. Uh, love to just kind of share, what I'm doing, and and if that can help others and help them in their in their pursuits, I'd love to do it. Okay. Finding a few areas that I think are just a little darker here. Into the hairline. Again, really trying to. The reason I'm pursuing it is I want to try to really get that there. Really make that forehead feel rounded. It is its own sphere, so kind of paying attention to those um, as I go. Seeing that the hairline does some slowly kind of works in. I'm gonna get a little green and just maybe a little yellow ochre, little viridian, and that in. It's like green. Yeah, that's what's fun. That's what's great about painting. And some green, and then come back at it with a little bit of those great spots where you get to play with these oranges and greens, these warm cools. Those are just really fun. And I can really geek out on color. And you notice like I'll just take some of these, I mean almost directly tube paints, and the edges are where I like to put kind of I'm working in skin tones. So when you're working in skin tones, you're working in mostly neutrals. Yeah, some of them are a little more than others, but when you're working into those, you can take some of your uh, really rich color, and you can just kind of plop them in here and there, and because they're on the edge, they're not all that seen, and it's pretty sweet. I'm gonna try to work on the shadow a little bit. Shadow cast on her neck. Two will really let me draw the chin, which I think may have made just a little long in my drawing. Hold on, I think I got a phone call I need to take. Hello? Yes, I presently I don't have the glass one, but I mean I can have it made. It would just I guess I just say that to say yes, it is absolutely possible that it's available. I just don't have it right this moment. So okay, sure. I think I still have your email address, right? Okay, great, perfect. Yeah. Sure. There's a lot of options. So one of the things I can do is I can send a direct invoice, just through email from Square, Square Reader, which is I could do that. One of the things that I like, sometimes is if you're familiar with it or not, it's can be helpful. Venmo is really nice because that's just I don't get a credit card transaction fee for and that's always nice if you're familiar with it. If Venmo, if not, that's fine too. Um, okay. I wish I did. I do have someone here in the house that I may be able to see, and if he has availability, because they're iPhone users, and I've never been an iPhone user. I'm kind of an odd duck. sounds good. Yeah, let's do this. Uh, you sent me a follow-up email. I will I'll ask. We rent our basement to some folks at our church, so it's just kind of one of our ministries here that we like to hold personally. And I'll see if he has that set up, and if I can, he or his wife, if I can have it just sent to them, and then they can send to me. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, whatever you like to do, I don't mind. If you prefer Apple Pay, if you give me like a day or so, I can try to figure out a way to make that work. And I don't think it'd be a problem. So, okay. 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 Sure. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds good. I can send you the. Would you just put it easier if it was just an account number and name? Or is that? Okay. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I can share those details with you. So, give me about a day or so, and I'll get an invoice for you with shipping, and then if I've got the address there, I'll send you my name and address total. You'll have all that together. So, Deborah, thank you so much. Yeah. Cheers. Bye. Okay, I'm back. Had to take a phone call. All right. Um, I was beginning to work on the shadow here in the neck, and let's see. I want to just make it a little darker, make it a little more opaque, and we'll kind of see where we end up because I want to get this reflected light that's on the chin. I just want to get that a little more clear. Um, Welcome if you just joined. It's great to have you. I'm working um, on top of a portrait sketch that I did yesterday for a demo for the Kansas Art Guild. And uh, now's the time to refine it a little more, to take those next steps. And the first step was to really get everything covered. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about all this today. Really, I wanted to work on the face. It was still a little wet, and I wanted to work back into that. So the first step was just to make sure that I had adequate coverage everywhere. One of the things that can really mess with your paintings is if there's just some areas that are unfinished. And if there are a few areas that maybe aren't covered, or there's a little bit of that canvas showing through, it just it robs the piece of um, that that illusion. And so I really needed to get that done. I did that. That was step one, and step two was the kind of refining it all at the about at the same pace. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, is giving it that refinement. So I've done refinement around the eyes and the forehead and the nose, and kind of where I'm lacking still is this area in and around the mouth and the chin, and so that's my area of focus. I'll probably spend about another 15 minutes, 20 minutes on this, and then I'll end the stream because really the rest I will battle this and continue working on it for the rest of today, and maybe even possibly into tomorrow as well. And yeah, obviously I'll have to do more here, but probably those are the things that the refinement is so small and so subtle that it just doesn't really show up on, a 1080p video, and there's really just no way of of, uh, of showing what's happening. If you were here in the room with me, or if we were together, I could really show and we could talk. That'd be great. But nothing much happens after about this. It's about all the detail that a video can pick up. All right, so as I said, I wanted to get this a little more. It needs some thicker paint. Is what needs to happen, and so I'm gonna create a neutral here with Viridian and burnt sienna, and create this nice kind of cooler neutral. To and I'm kind of raking my brush across the canvas right now. So you can see there's times where I pull a little too far, and some of that lighter area, this what I call the ground layer. This is the ground layer. Some of this color that you see here, 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 here. That's what I've been working on top of rather than working on top of the white canvas, and that shows through, at least right now, because it's all still wet and it's moving around. So I'm trying to working into the wet is nice. There we go. And so it's a little bit darker of a shadow. Then there's kind of a reflected light section. And I think I might want to extend the shadow out, or sorry, this side of our face out just a little more. And let's see, that might have been a little lower than I intended if I kind of pull into section here. Yeah, I think I like that. Get up my trusty mirror. Mirror never lies. Mirror will give you a great critique of your work as you're doing it. It'll be brutal, I warn you. So there's a kind of a darker shadow you can see. When you're painting anything, there's so many things happening with light. So light is coming in here. Our light source is coming from above here. So it's striking the blue of this fabric, and that blue is reflecting into the shadow on this side of our face. But then also light's coming down a shadow. The light's coming down here is casting a shadow here, but it's hitting like the collarbone and the lower parts of the neck, and that in turn is reflecting light back up, and so you have this nice little area here. And I want to ensure to include that, but I want to do it in a way that I'm paying attention to the temperature and getting some of those things just right. So I'm gonna try to put some of that darker shadow in just a little bit. I don't want to. It does need to go darker, and this can remain about the same value on this edge, but I need to kind of go a little darker in here, I think, is my assessment, and we'll see how that ends up. If you have questions, please reach out and let me know about the process, because it's not all that great. It's not all that fun if I just sit here and talk about what I think you want to know. It's a little more fun if you know what you want to know. You know what you want to ask. Okay, creating a little darker shadow. Definitely gets warmer. So alizarin crimson I just dipped into, gets a little warmer as it comes around here. carefully looking and assessing. And so I've added that, but then what has happened is now we don't really have much of a transition between, this value and this value. And so that needs to, we just need some in between to kind of help get us around there. And that always takes just a little bit of doing. I'm going to warm up the reflected light underneath here. I'm going to take some CAD red, and I'm going to just start working that in. It's okay to grab that tube color just like that, primarily because I'm working into a lot of neutrals that are already there, and so it doesn't go too far over the top. It's definitely a warm reflected light on the underside, and I want to get that in there. But want to take it easy. While I've got this brush out, I'm gonna there's some kind of warmer transitions here that I think I can make happen. And I'm gonna have to work my way into, I was talking about just creating more space for this dark shadow to work its way into the light, because it was just a little too strong of an abrupt change. So I can kind of work that way, and I can work back this way. Make sure that softens out nicely. Like that. There's some nice, I have to be a little careful. But there is some light landing on the chin here. I want to make sure that this is still kind of my lightest area, lighter, a little darker, where these bits of light hit. And so it's, I don't want to make it too light, but I definitely want to emphasize that area a little bit to show that, hey, the light is striking down here too, creating a little bit of a highlight, just a tad. If I were to make that the same brightness as, like, say this up here, then we're losing our decaying light. The brightest areas are here, and we want to work our way toward darker and darker sections. It's not quite as dark as I have it there, so I'm just trying to kind of come back in here and work on some of these passages just a little bit. I wanted to cool that off. I think I'd had it a little too warm. It certainly is warm, but it's okay to let some of these edges get lost in here. That's one of the things that happens a lot, that we're always trying to overdo it. It's like, well, no, that's how the mouth works, and it's like, well, that's at the same time, it's not what you're seeing. So sometimes it's got to be very, very careful. It's a lot warmer here around the nose than I have it. And I'm getting to the stage now where if I wanted to, I could get out a smaller brush and start to describe a little more detail in some of the areas. I probably will steer clear of that for now. But it is kind of getting to that time where I could. Okay, so that was a little bit of my goal to begin dealing with the chin, and I need to continue doing some of that here around the lips and the mouth. Um, a little bit of kind of a warmth in the top part of the nose here. Right, I still lacking some of the clarity that I really want around the mouth, and so when I look back and forth, yes, yeah, there's kind of a bit of a highlight here, um, but I see, the shadow here, kind of comes up into this space, and so I kind of set myself up to figure out, um, basically hang out here until I've solved some of the issues that I have. I've got a little bit of problem with it. Um, Basically saying, all right, you're staying here until we get there. So we can try some of this bit of a highlight, see if that does it. Some of that is a little brighter here too on the underside. Probably not as much as I've done it. I'm gonna take this same bit of color and just try to kind of work it in up here. What I want to cover is my pencil marking that was still kind of showing up. So I'm gonna have to do that with a little bit of paint body. So that's kind of working down in, working back up. And you'll notice, I mean, I just did a little bit of a change there, and how swiftly that altered the shape of the mouth and changed changed the whole thing. This is why portraiture is just so difficult. You get into these passages where a small adjustment suddenly changes the drawing, and you're like, oh my word, what have I done? Um, and it's can be very alarming sometimes. There's some pretty good color in here. I'm just trying to take it easy because, you know, too much color too fast can really mess with things. Don't really want to um, make her appear like she has got a lot of makeup on. I'm not really interested in that. So um, just notice too, this area is a lot lighter. This area of shadow is lips are meeting together, just not nearly as dark as I had it. Yet we do get that kind of darker corner there. I have painted it slightly as though and mouth is slightly open. I like that kind of it as though she were about to say something. To me, it implies a little bit of movement and life, and I always like to add those sorts of elements to just give a little more to the painting. You know, not all is like, oh, I've got to work to get it real, or I've got to create realism. As much as you know, there's a few other powerful decisions you can make that do a lot better job of kind of creating reality that aren't necessarily just finding more details. Kind of finding some of the motion and life in the paint. Okay, that shadow on that side that I was talking about on the lips, I'm kind of watching how right now I've got this really bright bit of color right here, and I think that shadow just kind of extends up there, and here's those moments where I'm like, I think this is going to help it overall, but at the same time, it's like, well, I actually don't know. And so until it's done, it's hard to say. But yeah, I think that did. And again, on kind of on the shadow side, there's really nothing clearly delineating where the lip begins and the skin begins. Like you just can't really tell. And then rather than saying, "Oh well, I need to make that clearer," just follow, just yeah, just follow what's happening, and you'll see once you kind of start just following what's happening that you're like, oh, it does seem to just get lost, and I can just paint that being lost. And it works. Kind of like the edge of the eyes here. I haven't really spent too much time on the eyes. I mean, just look at the amount of detail. That's really just, there's really nothing there. But and yeah, where does the edge of this eye? You look at the source material. Where does the edge of the eye begin? I mean, you just can't really tell. So it's okay to just make it the shape that you see, and then let our, as the viewer comes to the piece, they intuitively understand the way light works. If someone, we've grown up in this world and we know a lot about it, and so if someone were to see somebody in light like this, we already know that this volume of the eyeball here is going to cast a little bit of shadow, and we're not going to be able to really tell where that edge is, and that's okay. That's all I'm saying. Just don't sweat it, and make it happen. Put it in there as you see it. Well, my plan was to only go to three, but I mean, but everyone's hanging out, so if you have a question or two, drop it off now because I don't know how long I'll continue going. Um, I'm gonna slowly make some decisions. Like I think like the shadow is just a little warmer than I have it. And that's one of those like, oh yeah, I'll make that call. Carry that into that side of the nose a little bit. Um, and and so if you're like, oh, I didn't really see that change, don't sweat it. I think it's hard to see in a 1080p video. Okay, there is kind of a darker area. It's very blue as well. I may use kind of some of the green here. Um, Using green and burnt sienna to create a little cooler. That's Viridian I'm using there. Um, Kind of create this interesting neutral that's made from, a couple colors opposite end of the color wheel. And then after doing that, then I really need to say, okay, well, uh, where does this edge, kind of where does that end? So I'll just take some of my mixed black. This is burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. These two together kind of makes a nice, rich, chromatic black. And I need to come in here a little bit with that. And I may even have to go get some ivory black and really pump that deep dark spot. Those are kind of nice because we have these areas in the light and we want to really say that's deep there in the shadow, especially when we finish the head covering. We really want that to feel like that travels around back there. And it may just need another layer. That's another side of it. It's like right now I'm working on top of a very wet layer um, that I demoed yesterday for painting or an art society here in Kansas, and I'm working wet on top of wet, and at some point, if I really want a couple more layers, I'm gonna have to let it dry and kind of work back into it. But at the same time, I may get to a place where I'm like, oh, I'm satisfied with where it is. I like the energy of the piece; it's working. So we'll just see what happens. Painting, I probably will share it social media channels, so you can find me. Same EVWIII, no matter where you go. I think my automation broke for Twitter, so I don't know that I posted on Twitter for like 2 years, but I think everything else is operational. Does anyone have any questions? You might have also just fallen asleep a while ago. That's okay too. I'm gonna step back and take a look. Try not to bump any cameras or anything. You know what? Usually you should, if you don't, when you're working, just kind of set it down, come back, look over it, and say, what else needs to happen here? And there's quite a bit of work that still needs to be done. And I'm gonna probably work toward that for the rest of today, and then also for um, possibly part of tomorrow as well. Do have some other paintings I need to make. But usually, if I start one, I like to finish it, because otherwise, it just kind of sits there and becomes this monster that I'm afraid to jump back into again. Um, so anyhow, I think that's going to do it for today. I really appreciate everyone staying on. Um, I'm going to keep working at this, and we can see how it turns out. I'll share it online, probably in a couple of days. So I do appreciate you being here, all of you. If you haven't yet, please hit subscribe. The bell is a good idea, because I do these fairly often. I know I haven't done it for last month, but if I'm going to be in here painting, sometimes I'm working on a still life, sometimes I'm working on the figure, portrait, and no matter what it is, I'm here, and I'm happy to answer your questions. You can just watch, say nothing, that's fine too. And yeah, that way you get notified, and you can hop right in when I get going. You can see them from the start too. But thanks everybody. God bless, and we'll see you next time.